Yo, what is up guys, it's your boy Mike. You already know what is up and what is good. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the Houston Rockets, who have seemed to figure some things out. Everything is falling in place and they're starting to look like a version of what they were last year. But before we get into that, if you guys are new to the channel and just now finding me for the very first time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join the family. The Rockets are slowly starting to get back to what they were last year. The Houston Rockets at one point were the laughingstock of the league, sitting at nearly last in their respective conference, given that the previous season they were at the top of the league with 65 wins and one game away from being in the NBA Finals. They were a huge disappointment. Of course, we all knew that they wouldn't be the same team coming into this season due to the loss of their key defensive players, Trevor Ariza and Luke Mbamute. That's all old news. Let's talk about how the Rockets have made a huge turnaround from being in the bottom of the West to holding home court advantage, being tied in 4th place with the Portland Trail Blazers. The Rockets are 9-1 in their last 10 games, picking up some good wins, and especially that incredible showdown against the Boston Celtics just last week. That game was unreal, and the Rockets made a very convincing statement around the league saying we can still be viable contenders in the West. Their offense hasn't changed much, as they still average the most 3-point attempts per game and the most 3-point makes per game. But at the same time, their percentage isn't all that great, just sitting at 35%, but only because they take so many. So it kind of makes up for itself. The Rockets have to understand, and I'm sure they do, that if they plan to win games by shooting the 3 with such high volume, they will also lose games by playing that same way. Like they always say, live by the 3, die by the 3. When the Rockets' 3s aren't falling, they have to acknowledge that they aren't, or else that will cause them to waste better shot opportunities. When they aren't going through, Mike D'Antoni has to give in to that mid-range game. Give Chris Paul some run to get him some open shots and open up their 3-point shooting even more. Then they can start to transition to layups, which is also part of the resume offense. As a hooper, and I'm sure some of you guys know too, when you see your shot not falling, you lose your confidence that game. You're hesitant to shoot shots that were always confident to you, and you kind of lose your rhythm and lose your touch. You start to overshoot, you start to undershoot, and that leads to bad shooting nights. That's why a good coach always sees that and runs alternate plays to keep you going and keep your confidence high. So the Rockets will have to adjust as much as it pains them, because otherwise teams will come in and say 2 or 3 things. One, which is probably going into every game against the Rockets, is to limit James Harden. Keep your hands out and up, try your absolute best to keep him off the line, and don't get caught reaching in. Be patient, stay down, and wait for him to make his move. Then, rely on your help, but not too much, until you can recover and prevent the kickout or alley-oop to Capella. And this leads to number 2, lock up the paint. If you limit points in the paint and keep them out, then you're leaving them with 2 options. One being one they don't like to do so much, and that's shoot the mid-range shot, and the other one is one that they'll do with their eyes closed if they have to, and that's shoot the 3. Which ties into one quote that I mentioned earlier: if you live by the 3, you're gonna die by it. And to number 3, I hinted to it earlier, you have to guard the 3-point line. It's always harder against this team, but you have to close out hard with your hands up and stay down on shooters. If you can do that against this team, then you should be in really good shape to come out with a win. Their offense in their last 10 games has also been very good, being 1st in offensive rating and actually 3rd in net rating in that span as well, just behind the Spurs at number 1 and the Pacers at number 2. But while their offense hasn't changed, their defense actually has picked up. So far overall this season, the Rockets defense sits at 24th in the league. Since December 9th, their defense now stands at 12th in the league. Even without the pieces that made them elite defensively last year, they are still able to turn up their defensive intensity. So if this stands, they can continue to maintain their spot and potentially move up in the standings too. On another note, let's talk about how Harden's been on another level. Just unreal, especially without his number 2 guy, CP3. I read in his last 10 or so games, I forget what he said, I got it from Chris Broussard, but he's been averaging 40 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds, or something like that, being one of only 3 active players that still play right now to have 10 straight games scoring 30 points or more. Harden has been playing out of his mind, and has been the engine behind this whole team's turnaround in this streak so far. Harden has really taken on the challenge of being the lead guy and giving his team everything to keep his team afloat in the Western Conference. And he's been without a doubt just phenomenal. Now there's question if he can keep this up and sustain this level of play throughout the season for the full length of 82 games. Now if you ask me, I'd tell you yes, but you have to also factor in the injuries with Chris Paul. Harden was able to sustain the play last year, but he had the supporting cast defensively to do so. And also, Chris Paul is continuing to age. At some point, something will have to change to prevent Harden to take on such a burden like he's been doing as of late. That's why I said yes, but you have to factor in Chris Paul's health. Because if Chris Paul is healthy, James Harden doesn't have to do that, leaving him more energy when the playoffs hit. It's not that he can't do it, he's certainly capable, but can he sustain this for a whole season, potentially going into the playoffs with Chris Paul in and out of the lineup? Harden has also been going crazy in not just his scoring, but in his playmaking as well, getting high volume numbers and assists too, which we all know James Harden is highly capable of. This team is in good shape once Chris Paul returns from his injury. Chris Paul's health is definitely the X factor on this team. If not, it's Capella's defense and consistency. But none of that will matter if Chris Paul is on the sidelines. It's not that they're a bad team without Chris Paul, but we all know how much better they are with Chris Paul suited up. But this season, it's been as if they're a better team without Chris Paul, giving Harden more green lights. That's why you have Harden getting the performances he's been getting, but we all know he's capable of doing that with Chris Paul on the floor as well. If Chris Paul can come back to this team with the way that they are playing right now, they are in supreme shape to really be a close version to what they were last year. But he's got to stay healthy. We all know how his health possibly costed him his very first trip and possibly his very first ring at going to the NBA Finals last season. You also have the guys around Chris Paul and Harden doing a lot better as well, such as Austin Rivers, PJ Tucker, and also Clint Capella has been performing a lot better as well. Yeah, PJ Tucker continuing to lead the league in corner threes and a real grind out, hard-nosed player that gives his best effort every night. A solid rebounder and a real foundation player on this team. Then you have your new addition of Austin Rivers, who's actually been playing pretty good defense and shooting a little better as well. And he's been a nice little pickup for this team so far on the low. Now there is news that they are going for more pieces that I think can really help this team make that extra spur to land them a good spot in the playoffs. I know I saw news where they were going for players such as Kent Bazemore. I think if the Rockets can land a player like Kent Bazemore, who already plays in a system where he has the green light to get up threes and get up shots, and he can catch fire at any point, I believe Kent Bazemore would be a really nice addition to this team. But I am curious to see who the Rockets would give up to get Kent Bazemore. Rockets fans, let me know who the Rockets could give up to get Kent Bazemore. Now they can also go for players like J.R. Smith, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to add depth to their shooting and really make those players fall right into their playstyle and they'd fit perfectly. If you add those players to this team, they become even more deadly like they are right now. Because like I said, you're adding more shooters to your arsenal, making them more difficult to guard. Having more guys on the perimeter that can shoot the ball, you're going to put the defense in a tough situation and you're going to force them to make a choice. You either have to stay home on the shooters, or when James Harden does his little crossover and goes to the basket, you're putting the help defender in a real tough position. Like I said, he either has to stay home on the shooter to prevent an open three, or he has to pull into the paint and help on defense to prevent Harden from getting an open layup. So that's why I feel like you have to go for players like this that not only fit your system, but make them difficult to guard much like they were last year. And not to mention, you also have Capella down low in the paint. If Capella's man starts to help, that's a lob all day. So again, if the Rockets can land either of these guys that I mentioned, I can really see the Rockets sustaining their level of play. And again, if Chris Paul can come back and integrate his way back into the rotation without much disruption of how they're playing right now, this team is in really nice shape to make themselves contenders in the West once again, and can hopefully make a similar run to what they were able to do last year. So guys, let me know what you think on this Rockets team and how they're gradually starting to climb back into contention. Do you believe Harden can keep up this level of play throughout the whole season to propel this team into the playoffs? Which I think they will. I think they'll get into the playoffs, no doubt about it. But do you think Harden can keep up this level of play for the whole 82 games with Chris Paul going in and out? Go ahead and drop a comment down below and tell me what you guys think. I read and respond to all you guys, so go ahead and drop a comment. If you guys are new to the channel and like what you guys see, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button and join the family. Thank you for watching and sticking through the video. I hope you guys have a great day. It's been your boy Mike, and you can let that beat drop.